Hi, welcome to Week in Review, where we look at some of the headlines making news. I'm joined again, as I am by many weeks, my good friend Don Mecoy. From sports, we have Darnell Mayberry, and Ben Felder is going to pop in and talk about some stuff happening at the Capitol. Let's start there. I'm Phil O'Connor. I'm the Live Enterprise Director. Ben, let's talk a little bit about what's going on at the Capitol this week. Once again, Oklahoma facing another budget shortfall.
Yeah, so everyone's maybe familiar with the fact that the legislature is trying to solve a $900 million, almost $900 million budget shortfall when they prepare for the next year's budget. But it was announced this year that we have a revenue failure. And what that means is that when the legislature put together this year's budget, they had planned to have more money than it turns out that they're bringing in. So the revenue failure, the state has decided that they're just going to do an across-the-board cut to all state agencies, about 0.7%. So it doesn't sound like too much, but when you consider that every agency or most agencies are really strapped for cash, any reduction really hurts. The Department of Education, their cut is going to be about $50 million, and they're going to spread that across to all schools. And once again, when you're already kind of looking for every dollar, and every dollar counts, it's a big hit.
And is this, again, part of just the downturn in the oil industry, the energy industry, that tax revenues are just lagging from that?
It is, and this is the second year that we've had a revenue failure, not quite as big as the one last year. I think that there's still this thought that the economy is showing signs of improvement, or that it's logical to think that it will show some signs of improvement going forward. But it's still a tough budget time, and like I said, the legislature is trying to fill a $900 million budget shortfall. This year, the legislature has talked a little bit more about trying to raise revenues instead of just making cuts. Where can they find money and increase taxes and fees? The governor in her State of the State address came out with a pretty kind of a bold proposal for a variety of tax increases. This week, as the legislature is kind of debating some of these issues, she said, "Hey, if you send me a budget that doesn't necessarily implement some of my proposals, maybe not every single one, but some of my proposals to help shore up this hole," she said, I might be inclined to just veto the budget bill.
So we've got taxes moving forward on all sorts of fronts, everything from cigarettes to barbers to architects to whoever.
Yeah, and it's really all about kind of finding, what's the tax increase that would frustrate the least amount of people. And smoking's kind of one of the leaders right now. $1.50 per pack is a tax increase that seems to have some decent support in the legislature. Something like 30% of Oklahomans smoke. So for 70% of Oklahomans, they might be thinking, hey, I could support that, wouldn't really impact me.
Gotcha. Okay, so and also we have with the elevation of Scott Pruitt to head the EPA, we have an opening for the Oklahoma Attorney General, and we've got somebody filling the post.
Yeah, Mike Hunter, the Secretary of State for Oklahoma. Governor Fallin appointed him. He will serve in this position until 2018, when the Attorney General's seat will be an open race.
And what's his background?
So Hunter has worked as, like I said, the Secretary of State. He's kind of worked as kind of been a behind-the-scenes type figure, working in the AG's office. Was talking with our Capitol reporter yesterday, Dale, just kind of about what can we expect the tone of his AG's office to be. Probably going to be quite different than it was for Pruitt for a couple of reasons. Pruitt made a lot of noise with his lawsuits against the EPA and challenging various federal regulations. Well, now that he's gone and he's heading the EPA, and we have a Republican president, a lot of conservative states like Oklahoma are going to be probably less inclined to push back on the feds. In fact, there's kind of been a reversal right now. While states like Oklahoma and Texas were the ones filing a lot of the lawsuits, now we're seeing states like California and Washington. It's kind of their turn now.
Okay, and then you had an interesting conversation with Senator James Lankford this week that people can read about tomorrow.
Story tomorrow. So, obviously one of the big stories surrounding the new president is these allegations of ties between him and the Russian government. There's been allegations that his campaign had coordinated with the Russian government that had been found to be hacking into various political organizations, including the Democratic National Committee. There hasn't been any direct evidence of Trump and his connections, and that's what Senator Lankford, who is a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is investigating this, has said. He says that the allegations are serious, they're worth looking into, and it's an ongoing investigation that's happening behind closed doors. But he told me in an interview yesterday that so far he hasn't seen any direct evidence that leads him to believe that there is a direct tie between President Trump and Russian officials. Now, we have seen that obviously his campaign chairman, his national security advisor, who was an advisor during the campaign, Michael Flynn, who resigned last week, that intelligence officials did find that there were phone conversations or conversations between those individuals and Russian officials. So there's been a lot of smoke and maybe even a little bit of fire on the periphery, but the Senate Intelligence Committee is still conducting this investigation. Democrats are calling for an independent investigation. Langford told me that he feels like his committee it's a bipartisan committee, Republican controlled, but he feels like it'll produce a bipartisan outcome. And one thing I asked him, I said, well, how do you, Langford was not shy about telling me that he is skeptical of Russia, that he doesn't see Russia as an ally or a friend of the United States. And a lot of people have criticized President Trump on the campaign for taking this kind of soft stance on Russia and maybe sometimes seeming to embrace them. And I asked Langford about this, if that makes him uncomfortable, and he said, you know what, George W. Bush, when he became president, he made the comment that I looked into the eyes of Putin and I saw someone I could work with. When President Obama was first elected, he reached out to Iran. So Langford said, you know what, I'm skeptical, but I'm going to let him create his foreign policy with a watchful eye.
I think the concerns that have been expressed about the Intelligence Committee investigation is that many of their findings are expected to be redacted, which would leave a lot of questions for the public still about what was found in the investigation.
Yeah.
And that's why some of the people are saying there should be another independent investigation that wouldn't be subject to all those restrictions.
Yeah, and Langford kind of gave President Obama credit for kind of setting a standard on this, because the Obama administration, before he left office, did conduct an investigation in which they released some, but not all, of their findings. There were some redacted and some things that were kept under wraps so as not to reveal the intelligence strategy there. And Langford said, hey, the president did it before he left, the same thing should be expected now.
Okay, it'll continue to be fascinating for some time, I'm sure.
Not going away anytime soon.
Right. All right, let's move on. Let's something a little bit more fun.
I find it fun.
Don, let's talk about the Midwest City and the new theaters there. We're going to have some more screens to down some popcorn in front of.
Yeah, Warren Theaters, which operates a really big and popular theater in Moore, has plans to build a new 14-screen movie house in Midwest City. They need the city to pass a tax increment financing vehicle, and I think they expect the city to do that. The city seems amenable to that because Midwest City has really been trying hard to develop a retail area over there, and they've had some success already. Some development has taken place. And with this Warren Theaters, which is if you've never been the one in Moore, it's really interesting because they have balconies where they serve food and they serve alcohol. It's for adults only. They're really nice theaters. And I know a lot of people will drive to Moore to go to Warren just because it's a little more special than some of the other theaters in town. They're going to have something like that in Midwest City, and I think they're trying to attract people in Midwest City and from outside Midwest City to come there and spend money.
And you mentioned this was sort of an effort to sort of develop the southeastern part of the city, essentially?
Yeah, this was an area that at one point, not too long ago, was fairly neglected, and they realized this is an area that's easy to get to. Midwest City has not been a big attractor of sales tax kind of businesses. They have Heritage Park Mall in the distant past that is basically empty now, but they have a new enthusiasm for the retail that's developing there, and this Warren Theaters is really going to help that.
Okay, speaking of enthusiasm, downtown again, the site of more apartment development.
Yeah, there's some condos that they're planning to build on Automobile Alley. I think it's around 6th and Broadway. These are upscale condos with price tags starting at $600,000 up to $1 million. Has a really nice view of downtown. They'll be, not just ordinary apartment-looking places. They'll be more upscale than that. And Nick Preftakes, who's developing this, has had successes in the past at developing properties in the downtown area. Not as close to downtown as this is, but or as this would be. But he sees a niche for this. And it's not a huge place. It's several stories tall, but it's going to be a limited number of living places. But he sees a niche for that, and even though a lot of people are looking for more reasonably priced housing in downtown, he sees a market for these upscale places.
Yeah, and Automobile Alley, you have a lot of projects planned. You have that site right across from the YMCA. That little corner lot that they've been talking about developing there. This is going to be on an empty lot that's there on 6th and Broadway, I think.
Yeah.
And then the gas station aren't there still plans for that to be, or the guy that was converting that had all the trouble with the review committee.
Well, I don't know where that project is. Yeah, he went back a couple of times and redesigned, and I can't frankly tell you exactly where that project is right now. But it was actually a project that was somewhat similar to this one, but it ran into some obstacles, and I don't know if that's still moving forward. I think it's still stalled. But he still has control of that property, and there will be something there eventually, because Automobile Alley is really getting built out in all directions.
If you haven't been downtown in a while, come on downtown, because it changes so rapidly. There's just so much going on down here.
There is a lot.
All right, let's go to the toy box. Big trades, a new look for the Thunder.
Yeah, they made a big trade yesterday, probably the biggest trade of the trade deadline. They acquired 2 players. They sent out 3. They acquired Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott from the Chicago Bulls. They also got a 2018 second-round draft pick in that deal, which should help them because the Bulls might not be as good next year. And they're flirting around 500 this year. So that should be a good draft pick in 2018 if the Thunder chooses to keep it. They sent out Cameron Payne, the backup point guard, Joffrey Laverne, and Anthony Morrow, backup perimeter players. So by all accounts, it was a good trade for the Thunder. They got the best player in the deal in Taj Gibson and the best shooter in the deal in Doug McDermott, someone who can really help Russell Westbrook for the last 20 or so games with his ability to shoot the ball and space the floor.
I remember him from the tournament, right? He played for his dad, I think,
Yeah,
Doug McDermott.
Doug McDermott played for Greg McDermott at Creighton.
Yeah.
And was
Had
a
a
heck
great
of a scorer.
tournament run,
Had a great college career at Creighton. Just one of the all-time best college players, especially at that level.
And a great nickname.
What's Dougie McBuckets?
McBuckets.
Yeah, Dougie McBuckets. So I think Thunder fans will really enjoy these 2 new players. Taj Gibson is said to be a pro's pro, just a consummate professional, and Doug McDermott, a class guy who obviously has the pedigree from his father. So I think Thunder fans will be pleased with this trade.
And I think Campaign, I mean, a lot of people really loved Campaign. I mean, I think he was popular with a lot of fans. We just probably never got to quite see him play to his full potential,
Yeah, the
right?
best thing he
Some
did is
injuries
dance with Russell Westbrook. So
hey, that's something.
it was unfortunate for Cameron Payne. He couldn't stay healthy while he was here. He had, I think, a thumb injury his rookie year that knocked him out of the summer league in Orlando, and that set him back a little bit his rookie year, and then a foot injury at the start of this season. So actually that stemmed from last season. So he just never could get on the mend, and that hurt him in his time in Oklahoma City.
Okay, and then there's rumors of one grumpy man maybe coming back to town.
Yeah, Kendrick
Or at least
Perkins.
he seems grumpy. Maybe he's actually a very...
He's a very pleasant guy, but
Is he?
Kendrick Perkins was in town last Wednesday. They played the New York Knicks, and Kendrick Perkins was here in the locker room. Kendrick Perkins once joked with another former Chicago Bull, Joakim Noah, who walked into the locker room a couple years ago when Thabo Sefolosha was still on the team. And Kendrick Perkins said, "We just let anyone in the locker room these days, huh?" And it became this big deal. And then so when Kendrick Perkins went back in the locker room last Wednesday, they sort of made that same joke. Kendrick Perkins said to no one in particular, but everyone in the room, "This will be my locker room again in another 2 weeks." And then as he was leaving, he said, "I'll see you all next Wednesday." So that was sort of some subliminal messages there, and we were kind of asking Kendrick Perkins, "What did you mean by that?" And he says, some things are better left unsaid, and even though he just said it. And so there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of hints that he gave out. There's a lot of speculation that he could be the guy that the Thunder brings back, because they did send out 3 players. They brought back 2, so that leaves them with an open roster spot now. And with the 15th spot, they could bring back some veteran leadership, which we've seen the Thunder do before with Derek Fisher, Nazir Muhammad, Karan Butler. They've added veteran players right after the trade deadline. So Kendrick Perkins is a candidate.
I think that might be the largest man I've ever seen in my life.
How's your relationship with Perk? Didn't he get upset with you one time?
Yeah, I still don't know what that was about, Don. I still don't know but I talked to him last Wednesday and we were good. So
Okay. What did he call you?
I would rather not get into
Okay.
it.
All right.
It wasn't McBuckets.
It wasn't good. I'll say that.
Definitely not McBuckets. Again, where do you find out stuff like this except here? Here at the Oklahoman. Pick up a paper, check us out online, subscribe. I'm sure you'll enjoy what you find there. We'll be back again next week. Thanks for joining us again. See you later.